How do we make sense of the universe? It's a huge question, right? For thousands of years, people have looked up at the exact same stars and come away with completely different answers. Today, we're going to look at two of those answers. One was born on the wide-open Pacific Ocean, and the other, well, it came from the ancient cities of Mesopotamia. We're going to explore two ancient ways of understanding our place in the cosmos.
And this quote right here, this is the key. This one idea from our source material really unlocks the entire story we're telling today. It draws a line in the sand, between two totally different ways of knowing something, knowing it from the inside out versus just observing it from the outside in.
So picture this. On one side, you've got the Pacific navigator. He's standing on the deck of a canoe, literally feeling the rhythm of the ocean. And on the other side, the Mesopotamian scholar. He's inside, probably in a palace or a temple, hunched over these ancient clay tablets. One is feeling the elements, the other is trying to decipher a code that's written in the sky.
All right, section 1, knowing versus observing. Let's really dig into this difference. Because, it's not just about what these two cultures knew. It's something way, way deeper. It's about how they knew it.
So get this, on a traditional Polynesian canoe, a va, the boat itself is basically a sensory instrument. Think about a modern yacht. It's got all these machine-driven winches and stuff that kind of dull your connection to the elements. But here, nope. Every line is held by hand. And that means the navigator is literally feeling the force of the wind, the push of the currents. That information is going directly into their body.
And that is the power of this whole approach. I mean, you can read about it, you can watch a documentary, but it's just not the same as the real thing, is it? This kind of hands-on, performative learning creates a direct, physical connection to the knowledge. It's exactly like the difference between just reading a recipe and actually being in the kitchen and cooking the meal.
Okay, now let's completely switch gears and jump over to Mesopotamia. Here, knowledge wasn't something you felt in your body, it was something you inscribed on clay tablets. Scholars there relied on what they call the stream of tradition. You can think of it like a river of these ancient official texts that were passed down through the generations. For them, knowledge was a library, not a feeling.
Okay, section 2, reading the celestial signs. So we've got these two very different philosophies, but how did they actually work in practice? How did a navigator out on the ocean and a scholar in a palace look at the same night sky and turn it into useful, actionable information?
For the Pacific navigator, the stars are basically a clock. See, for someone on a long voyage, time was distance. We're talking about journeys that could last for weeks. So knowing how much of the night had passed was absolutely essential for figuring out how far you'd gone. It wasn't about hours and minutes like we think of it. It was about the rhythm of the stars and how many miles you'd sailed before the sun came up.
And the Southern Cross, that became their celestial clock hand. As it moved across the sky, its position told them how the night was progressing. So when it was lying flat horizontally just above the horizon, the crew knew it was roughly midnight. It's a simple, elegant, and incredibly practical way to measure time when you're out on the open sea.
But in Mesopotamia, wow, time was political. They didn't just measure it, they loaded it up with destiny. I mean, look at this table. Specific months were systematically assigned to different lands, their own kingdom, Akkad, and their main rivals, Elam. So an omen in the sky during the second month wasn't just some random celestial event. Oh no, it was a divine message specifically about their enemy. And this personal connection to knowledge, it led to these incredible aha moments of rediscovery. For years, the modern Samoan word for a car driver was fa'uli, but it was only when they got back out on the water, through the physical act of voyaging, that they realized it was a mispronunciation of fo'uli, the ancient word for a canoe steerer. A piece of their own heritage almost lost forever was brought back to life simply by doing.
Now, the Mesopotamian equivalent, the umanu or scholar, was the polar opposite. This wasn't some personal identity you rediscovered. It was a professional state-sanctioned job. You were an expert in one of 5 very specific disciplines, and your entire job was to serve the king and the state. Knowledge was totally institutionalized.
All right, section 3, from data to paradigm. So we've seen the individual signs and the people who are reading them. But how did all these pieces fit together? How did they scale up from individual data points into these complete, complex systems for making sense of the entire cosmos?
Well, the Pacific Navigator system is just a masterpiece of mental integration. It's not a physical chart you can roll out. It's a star/wind compass that exists entirely in the navigator's mind. It combines the positions of the stars with the direction of the wind, the patterns of the ocean swells, and that gut feeling you only get from years at sea. It's a multi-sensory, living map.
The scholar's process, on the other hand, was this super rigid text-based procedure. Step 1, you see something in the sky. Step 2, you don't interpret it based on your feelings, you look it up in this massive canonical text series called the Enuma Anu Eliel. Step 3, you report the official pre-written interpretation to the king. And Step 4, you recommend the right ritual to fix whatever problem is coming. It was a bureaucratic, almost legalistic way of dealing with the universe.
And this is where the Mesopotamian system gets really wild and shows its true colors. It actually contained omens, the if parts of a prophecy, for events that were physically impossible. Like, an eclipse can never happen on the 21st day of a lunar month. It just can't. And yet, their texts had a specific omen for it anyway. So why? Why would they do that?
Because it reveals the fundamental difference between these two worldviews. The Pacific Navigator's system was a tool for mapping the real world as it is. The Mesopotamian scholar system, that was designed to build a reality, a complete, logical one that had to have an answer for everything, even the impossible.
So, Section 4, One Human Quest. Here we are with two totally different approaches, right? One is mapping reality, the other is building it. But what if these seemingly opposite paths were actually leading to the same place? What if they're just two sides of the same deeply human coin?
Now, it's really easy to look at this and fall into the trap of thinking one system is primitive and the other is advanced or scientific, but that completely, totally misses the point. Both of these systems were incredibly sophisticated.
They were both brilliant solutions just to very different problems. The navigators embodied knowledge that solved the immediate life-or-death challenge of finding a tiny little island in the middle of a vast ocean. The scholar's textual system that solved the problem of creating order, legitimacy, and a sense of control for a massive empire that was facing constant threats. And this quote just nails the motivation behind it all. For a Mesopotamian king, which ruler could possibly deny himself the chance to have his imperial destiny literally written in the stars? The sky became the ultimate divine justification for their power.
So in the end, whether it was through feeling the swell of a wave or deciphering a clay tablet, both the navigator and the scholar were doing the exact same thing. They were engaged in that fundamental human quest to look up at the vast chaotic cosmos and create meaning, create order, and find a path forward. And that brings us to a question for our own time. In a lot of ways, we're living in a new Mesopotamia, aren't we? An age of big data, where knowledge is this vast textual library. We are all scholars now. But in this race to build these complete logical systems, what have we lost? What is the value today of the navigator's knowledge? The kind that you can't just download, the kind that has to be felt and experienced to be truly deeply known.